Hi everyone, it's Matthew here from Bead Spider. How are we all going today? Today's show, I'm going to be showing you two different techniques on how to create beautiful beaded Kumihimo jewelry. So this is the finished pieces. Like this one is one of the 4-strand crystal ones, our Venus kit. And then these ones, for example, are my seed bead ones, the holiday bracelet, using all 8 threads. First thing I'll do, I'll show you how to set up your Kumihimo disc just here. So what I'm going to do is cut myself 4 lengths of thread, each 1.5 meters long. That's for this particular, the holiday bracelet, which is what I'm going to be demonstrating just now. You need to cut 4 lengths of thread, each one 1.5 meters or 4.5 feet long. I have pre-threaded these ones, which you wouldn't usually, you don't have to, you can pre-thread them at the beginning, but I find once you've sort of got yourself set up, it's a little bit easier. And what you can do is you just paint the last inch or so. If you do maybe about this much here, paint it with your super glue. It goes rock solid and it works like a little needle. This is a great way to just make your beads extremely threadable. They just go straight on there. What you do, you take a little thread. It doesn't matter what the thread is. I've got the same sort of thread, but anything will do. And also you want to prepare yourself a little weight bag, which is what I've got just here. So essentially my little weight bag, I'm going to be tying the middles together and then adding a weight bag to the bottom. So if I find, I've got my threads here, you find the middle of each thread and bring them all nice and close together. Just here. And then what I'm going to do is with this extra piece of thread, as I said, this piece of thread doesn't matter. It's just like we're going to just be using it to hold our weight bag. You just take that in and then tie a knot around these threads together, like so. That will do. And that keeps them sort of together in the middle. This is pretty much all that's for. So I'll just tie a second little knot like so. And then what I'm going to do is just create an extra knot that I can use to attach my weight bag to this thread. So again, I'll just tie a little loop, but this time I'm going to keep my fingers inside there like this, and then tie another knot on top of it so that if I just get that thread in there, just a standard, left over right style knot, pull that nice and tight. And then you can see I've got myself a little loop at the bottom, which is relatively firm, and I can just add on there my little weight bag. So I'll just thread that through there and attach. And now, because it's important that you've got a weight at the bottom of your threads, because it helps to pull your little Kumihimo braid out of the bottom of your little Kumihimo disc, the center of your Kumihimo disc there. Now that I've got this sorted, what I'm going to do is now put 4 threads on one side, 4 threads on the other. That way I've got pretty much 8 threads, and I'm going to bring this down through the middle of my little Kumihimo disc there. I'll use a hand to hold it in the middle and then get my little coin bag out the way. And then the plan is, what I'll do is just separate these 4 threads around. So if you pinch it with your finger like this, you can literally just separate them. Try and not have them get too tangled around each other. And what you would do is, for example, this one here, I'll put up the top on the left there. Then I'll put one over here, one here, and then I'll put another one down here at the bottom. So see that? I've attached 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter if it's a bit loose at the minute. We'll sort that out later. Then I'll put another one beside it at the top up here. So when you see how there's all these different little slots, essentially you want to be either side of different slots like that, just there. So now I'll just move this one around, and I want to try and keep this relatively sort of untangled. Get this roughly in the center, pull all my threads nice and firm and tight, and get everything all prepped and ready. And now I'm pretty much, you can see my weight is just dangling at the bottom here. This is what's going to be pulling everything down through to the bottom. Now that I'm in position, this is the point where usually you could add on your different beaded thread, the beads onto your threads. When it comes to the Kumihimo, what you need to do first, if I just show you here, see how it's got this little clasp on the end? You need to create a little bit of beaded Kumihimo, no beads, just plain Kumihimo to fill this little finding here, the little clasp piece. See how that's hollow in the inside there? See that? So what you want to do is create a bit of cord that will fit inside of that little hollow hole. And what I'm going to do essentially is begin the process of creating that Kumihimo braid. First things first, if you see just here, it says bottom left to top left. So essentially I'll take my bottom left cord just here, pull it out from my little Kumihimo disc like this, and bring it up to the top, just to the left of this pair just here. So see that? I took one from here and just put it up the top there. Now what I'm going to do is take the top right to the bottom right. So I'll just lift that up and pop that into the bottom like so. Then what we'll do now, with that now moved, you can see it's sort of been turned ever so slightly. So what I do now, I need to rotate my little Kumihimo disc so that I can work with my next row. So what I'll do is just turn mine. I like to work clockwise, but you can work counterclockwise as well. It doesn't matter which way you go. It's just entirely up to you. You just, as long as you're always turning in the same direction. So if you want to turn clockwise, you always turn clockwise. If you want to turn anti-clockwise, always turn anti-clockwise. It doesn't matter which way you do it as long as you're consistent. So anyway, now what we do, we just repeat that same process, and I go bottom left to top right, pull my thread out the way, top right to bottom right. There we are. And that will sort of begin the process of my braid. Then I turn, again clockwise, always the same, bottom left to top left, top right to bottom right. Then turn, bottom left, top right to bottom right. And then just keep going, try and keep a nice firm tension. Once you get the hang of it, you can go a little bit faster. It doesn't matter. It's super simple, super easy to do, but just keep turning, just like that there. I'll show you another clever little trick to know which way you've got to do next. So for example, just say you put this down and you forget, and then you go and pick it up and you go, oh, which one do I need to do now? There's a clever little way to be able to tell exactly which is the next way to go. So, okay, to know where you've got to do next, see how this little piece of thread is going over the top of these two threads. And if we look at the bottom, this little thread is going over the top of these two threads. That means that these two were the last two that I just did. So if I have a little look, it means this is the one that went from the bottom, now it's up the top, and this is the one that was up the top and now it's at the bottom. So that way I know when it comes to doing the next row, I just have to rotate and start again. So now I'll just continue on a little bit longer because I need to create a little nub that's the same length as this little finding just here. So see how I've got that little nib piece at the bottom? There's my little Kumihimo braid starting to take form. So I want it to be around about the same size as the little cap of my finding just there. So see that just there? My braid is now about the same size as this little hollow cap. So that's going to glue in perfectly to the end just there and looks super duper neat. So I'm going to start the beading process now. You can see that that's about the size that I'm going to want once I get to the very end. I'll just slide down my first bead and I'll just lift this up and pop that into position. See this thread that's going across just here? I'm going to pop my bead underneath that thread just there. If I just keep my finger under there, it will hold that bead under that thread. And then what I do is just exactly as before, take that up to the other side, make sure it stays under that little gap there. You don't want it to pop out and come on the top. And then what I'm going to do is take a bead on this top thread here. So see how I've got 3 at the top here? I'm going to get myself 1 bead, bring it down, and pop that into position, like so. And then again, I'll pop it underneath that thread so it's right in the center, like that there. Take my little braid there, and again, down to the bottom. So see that? They stay nicely underneath. That's important. If you do it a bit too tight, you can see it sort of pulls. You want it to be a sort of a nice even tension where it's not too tight and it's not too loose. It's sort of something that you get the hang of eventually. But anyway, so that's that. Now what I'll do, just as before, you just turn. And now I'll just keep my threads all nicely separated while I'm doing this, just to make my life a bit easier. I will bring up my next thread. So again, starting from the bottom, you just slide a bead down, put it in position, get it underneath that thread in the middle, like so. Hold it nice and tight with your finger and up to the top. So now I'll get my next thread, lift that up, bring a bead down to the bottom here. Ooh, hopefully I stayed in screen there. Underneath that little thread there, and then across. So I'll pull that across, and then rotate. And then see how I've got 4 little beads at the bottom here? Now we just continue this process again and again and again. If you're going to be stopping for the day and you don't want to forget where you're up to, what you can do is just you do one step halfway through the process. So I'll just do it the same as before, pop my bead under, and then if you pop that to the top there, you know now, because I've got 3 at the top, you can put this away, forget about it, don't have to worry about it anymore. And then when you come back later, you've got 3 at the top, so you know I have to do from the top to the bottom. So that's another great little tip. And now essentially with this process, I'll just keep on repeating, making sure I'm keeping my beads nice and firm underneath until your braid is 1 inch smaller than your desired length. So I'll show you now how to do the 4-strand technique just here. The first thing, you'll set it up exactly the same as you did your previous Kumihimo disc. So exactly the same. This time though, instead of 1.5 meters, you use 2 meters of thread, because the thread that I'm using, it's that little bit finer. So if you can see it just here, it's just a little bit finer. But again, it is very, very easy to work with. But this one, I definitely recommend set it up and then add your beads afterwards. But this particular design, it is only using 4 threads, but once you've got it set up and you've created that little piece, the little nub at the bottom that's going to fill this little finding just here, once you've got yourself to the point where you've created the thread to fill this little beaded cap, that's the point to add on your beads. So what I'm doing with this one, because you're only beading with 4 threads, it's very, very important that you put the beads in the correct position when you get to the point where you're ready to continue. Because the way this works, it only works if you do your Kumihimos in groups of 4. So it's very, very important to position your beads correctly. So the way that you would do that is you need to do 4 groups of little beads in a row, followed by 4 goes of just thread to lock them in. So essentially what you'll do, because we start at the bottom and move that to the top, and then we bring this one down to the bottom, we need to make sure both of these have beads on them. So you can see I've got my beads on this little thread just here, and you want to have beads on this thread here. You don't want to have beads on this thread, and you don't want to have beads on this thread, because these are the threads that we will work with later on, but not yet. It's very important that you position them correctly. So these two threads, and if you do one rotation, you'll see you want to have it again on these two threads, so that when you finish this, you'll do one rotation, and then the two threads that you're going to work with next, they're the ones that need to have beads. So essentially, that means this one, this one, this one here, and this one here. So it's every second thread. So if you have a little look, because it's on the left here, it'll be the one that's on the left here, and on the left here, and always, as you go round, it's always the one that's always going to be on the left. If you want to get a really nice spiral happening, so if we have a little look at this blue one, hopefully you can see it. See how they're the matte 3x4 crystal rondelles or donuts, depending where you're from. You'll see that you get a really nice spiral effect if you put pearls on one set and crystals on your other set. So that way it will give you that really lovely spiraling effect. With this particular one as well, because you are using a finer thread, don't forget you do need to use extra thread. The finer your thread is, the more thread you will need to make your Kumihimo designs. So it's very, very important that you keep note of that. So I'll just show you the technique now. So what I'll do is I've got my bead here, this one, so I know I can start with this one. I'll pop it underneath my first little pearl, as I usually would. Make sure it sits underneath. So I'll make sure it's under the thread, and then I'll go across and over the top. Then make sure it stays, see I've got that a bit too tight and now it's like popped under. You need to just loosen that back a little so that it stays nice and firm. Plus what you can do is pull this side one a little bit tighter to make sure it stays just like that there. So there we go. That's a bit better. Now that's sitting nicely. So what I'll do now is bring in another pearl, and again I'll pop it underneath, hold it in position, and just pull down on my little pearl just here. Try and keep it on the underside. I've got myself a bit too tight. Wait a second. There we go. Keep it a bit looser, and then there we go. That's nice. So now what I'll do, I'll rotate. I've got myself my crystals now, so rotate the same way. Get your crystals. Get the first one just here, bring that down, and just like before, we pop it underneath so that it's underneath this crossing thread, and then over the top and lock it in place, just like that there. Then again, take my opposite thread, just one bead, not two, get it underneath. Oh, you can see I've accidentally let one of my beads pop out. So it's good that this happens, because then you can see what you have to do if you make a little mistake. So it's always easier. You can just move them back and forth so that you're back into position, because that's easily that's usually the easiest way. So if I just undo this just here as well, slide my bead out the way, this one here needs to be underneath this wait a second, where am I? There we go. So underneath this first thread here. So make sure it stays under there. Very, very important. If it gets caught, just undo, if it pops out, undo it and make sure it doesn't come out, because it's important that they stay underneath. There we go. So same there, and then keep this one back underneath. There we go. Nice and firm. Perfect. So there we go. I'm happy with that now. Now I'll just bring this one up, pop it under, pull that nice and tight. That's locked that in. And then get this one out the way. Oops, pop that there. And making sure this is still under this thread, over the top and down. There we go. And you can see now I've got 4 little beads in a square there. See that? So there we go. They're 4 in a little group. Now what I'll do, I'll rotate. And this is the part where I lock the beads in. So what I'll do is lock the beads in with 4 beadless braids. So you can see this thread has no beads, just here, no beads. So I'll just bring that over the top and get it nice and firm. Then this one, again, it's got no beads, and lock that in. Turn it, again, no beads, take it up, and then one more time, no beads, and down. And that locks in your 4 little crystals in that row below now. So now I can rotate, and now I'll add in, just like I was before, 4 rows, but with beads now. So just pop it under, like so, and pop that there. There we go. Take one more, thread down my bead, if it'll slide. There we go. Under there. Stay under, my little friend. There we go. And then pull that down. And then rotate back and take this one underneath. Pull it up to the top. And then this one here underneath. And come on, under the agate. There we go. And then pull that nice and tight. So now what I need to do is just continue around by locking in the beads once more. So with no beads, I'll go up to the top and down to the bottom. And then on this side, up to the top and down to the bottom. And you can see it really just locks those beads in place. If I zoom out, I'll show you it from the side. There we go. So see how that little weight bag pulls it down? That's very important for helping you keep a good tension. But see how I've got that little spiral effect? That's because I've got the 2 pearls on, if we look at it this way, sort of like north and south have pearls and east and west had crystals. So that's what gives you that beautiful spiraling effect coming up the edge of your beads there. So don't forget, so that's essentially what you do to get that lovely effect happening. See how sparkly those crystals are? It works so beautifully when you sort of have complementary colors and then match your crystals and your pearls, because the different surfaces give you an entirely different texture. The crystals give you a really nice sparkle, and then the pearls give you a bright sort of that nice muted matte look as well. So anyway, I'll just do now I'll show you now how to finish off. That's essentially the entire process for the 4 bead method. You do 4 beads, 4 rows of beads, and then 4 rows of threads. But you must make sure that you don't end up doing like 2 beads, and then you do your 4 things of threads, and then you start doing beads. It's very, very important that the very first row is all 4 beads. Otherwise, you sort of get this strange effect where it doesn't quite look right, where at the bottom, they're all nice and level. See how they're all in the same level there? It keeps it nice and neat and clean if you do it that way. So anyway, I'll show you now how to finish it off and add on your clasp. Essentially what we want to do is create a second little Kumihimo braided section that will fit into the other end of our cord. So I'll just do it very, very quickly, not adding any beads anymore. Over the top, down to the bottom. Ooh, my thread's a bit caught there. There we go. Rotate. Down to the top, up to the top, sorry, down to the bottom, rotate again, up to the top. These little fellas just here are very, very useful for when you're doing these beaded threads. They're little bobbins that you can get, little Kumihimo bobbins, and they just sort of open up. And when you're running out of thread, you just unwind a bit from your bobbin and then just seal it back up. And then you've got, see, look, you've got all this extra thread again, where the other one is very, very short now. See that? See how short that is? And it sort of becomes a bit more difficult to work with. You can just open that up and start working with it. Now, I'm going to show you how to finish this little fella off. You would repeat this process. The beading process you want to repeat until you're about 1 inch from the end, and then that's when you create this little nub section, I guess, that's going to go into your clasp. I'll show you on the other piece. So I'll start with this one here. I'll get my 1 thread, take off this 1 thread. This way the tension stays much, much firmer. So there we go. I've just pulled those 2. I've tied them in a knot. You can do it once or twice together, and then you just pull that nice and firm and tight down like that, and that will get those nice and tight. So I'll just put them sort of in the middle so that they're sort of held just loosely for now. Then I will take the next 2, just rotate, take this one just here, and this one just here, and I'll tie them together. There we are, that's nice and firm, like that. Just keep them sort of next to the other ones I've already tied.
then I will do these 2 threads. Take one and the other, tie them together like this, and then I'll just pop them with the others just so that I know I've already done these ones, and take the final 2 threads, and then again I will tie them together. So just like that, nice and firm. You can see I've got those nice and firm and tight now at the bottom. So like I said, I've just tied the opposite threads together until all 8 are secured. Now that it's secured is when you take it off the Kumihimo disc. So it's better to do it now, not before. And then I've just got a little knot at the very, very end. So now what you would do with this, again, you just take your super glue, get your little end of your super glue, and just cover this whole thing in super glue so that it goes rock solid hard. I'm not going to do it now because obviously it probably won't dry in time, but I will show you how to do the other end. They do work very, very similarly. Super glue all that so it's nice and firm, and then one by one, starting at the bottom, you can just cut your threads off once it's all super glued has dried. If we imagine that this was a full-length bracelet here, you'd super glue this end so that it's nice and tight, nice and firm, doesn't come apart or anything like that. Now, what I'm going to do on this side, this little piece that I had at the beginning, it doesn't matter. You can undo it. Otherwise, you just make sure you're in the right spot, and then you just come on in. You can cut it off or just undo the knot, whatever's easier for you. I might just cut it in this instance. There we go. And then the whole thing will just slide out like that. I'll just cut this one off as well so that we can see it on the other as well. There we are. There, just pull that out. So see how clean and neat that comes out? And then what you do, you just cover this in glue. If you have, you get your little finding. In this particular instance, you don't want to use super glue for this particular material because it doesn't bond. Super glue and metal don't bond so well to each other. What you want to do is get like maybe a silicon-based glue. So if you know E6000 or F6000 glue, that's quite a good one because it's like a sort of silicone-y rubber-based glue. That's the one to use. So if I just show you, there's my little thing. You can fill this little piece just here with glue, and then it just will go inside there and leave it to dry once with those sort of rubber-style glues for about 12, 24 hours. You've got about half an hour of wiggle room to position it before it's quite firm. And then after that, just put it down, forget about it, leave it. You don't want to touch it anymore. Just let that dry so that it is super, super duper secure. But yeah, then you just wait for your other end to dry, and exactly the same. You do the same sort of technique with this opposite end just here, and it's ready to just glue straight in. Here's one I made earlier. Both little pieces together like that. So see how that's nice and neat and clean at the very end? It gives you a really neat, clean finish at the end of your piece of jewelry just there. And you can see that sort of spiraling effect. That's your 4-strand method. You've also got your 8-strand method.